Hi, my name is Peter Sapira, and based on the public speaking course I teach here at Smith, I'm going to give you suggestions to help you negotiate the 5 major categories for giving a presentation. On the first day of class, even though I know the answer, I always ask the students for their number 1 public speaking concern or challenge, and almost everyone says anxiety. After that, my second question is, how does this anxiety manifest for you? You've just been called to the front of the class to give your presentation. How does your nervousness show up? Students usually say things like sweaty palms, racing heartbeat, butterflies, dry mouth, shaking limbs, and shaking voice. As they give their answers, I draw a diagram that ends up looking something like this. After we have reviewed everyone's answers and studied my portrait, I then ask what all of these symptoms have in common. While there may be more than one answer, I think the most significant similarity is that they are all sensations in the body. When I say this, I can sense that most students are thinking, so what? I think this is important because while most people are terrified of this condition called anxiety, none of these symptoms on their own are all that scary. In fact, many students who play or have played a sport say these are the exact same feelings they get before a game. Their hearts race, their palms sweat, they have intense butterflies, sometimes even to the point of nausea. But under these conditions, they don't care. They accept the symptoms as a part of pre-game nerves. Even professional athletes and singers say they get nervous before games and performances. But as with the student's experience, they accept and expect this. So my first tip is very simple, but incredibly effective. Accept the anxiety. Accept that you are going to be anxious. If professional athletes, actors, singers, dancers, people who are at the best at their craft, who make millions of dollars, who are revered in their profession, if they still get nervous before a performance or a game, chances are that unless you are giving the exact same presentation for the 100th time to a group of your best and least judgmental friends, you are going to be nervous. So accept it as part of the process. This can be very liberating because it means you don't have to fix, fight, or overcome the anxiety, which doesn't work anyway. I've been saying this for years, but now I have research to back me up. Harvard psychologist Daniel Wegner calls this phenomenon ironic rebound. He found that the more we try to overcome, fight, repress, or escape a thought or feeling, the stronger it grows, and that acceptance, or allowing the feeling to be there, is the best way to move past it. So rather than thinking, I'm anxious, how do I get over it? Daniel and I recommend thinking, I'm anxious, so what? One technique that can help you achieve this acceptance is to objectively observe the physical symptoms we discussed earlier. Notice the feelings as they occur in your body. Notice that your hands are shaking or that your mouth is dry, and leave it at that. This is similar to many mindfulness meditation techniques in which you watch your thoughts rather than engaging with them. So just watch these sensations arise and let them go, or let them stay. I want to stress that objective observation means watching without analysis or judgment. Keep your mind out of this process. Notice that your hands are shaking. Don't think about it. Why? Because the mind tends to add a negative interpretation to these sensations. My hands are shaking is very different than, oh no, my hands are shaking, I'm so nervous. The last time this happened, I forgot what I was going to say in the middle of the speech. What if that happens again? What if I bomb this presentation? What if? So just as they teach in mindfulness meditation, notice when you start judging your physical symptoms, remind yourself that you being nervous is simply a part of the process, and return to your objective observation. Okay, now we have my final technique for handling anxiety, which I have found works 100% of the time. But first, I will tell you a story to illustrate this technique before I explain it. Many years ago, I was about to teach my first class, and I was very excited. I was fully prepared. I was eager. I wasn't nervous at all. As I walked down the hallway, my only thought was that I was about to teach an amazing class. Then I walked into the room, and all 25 students were there, all seated in a semicircle, and all silently staring at me. For some reason, that silent staring freaked me out. And between the doorway and my desk, which was about a 10-foot walk, I had a full-blown panic attack. I was about 1 second away from saying, "I'll be right back," and then leaving and never coming back. I was truly on the verge of running away. So what saved me? I took attendance. So that's my final technique. Whenever you feel nervous, take attendance. That's a joke. The technique is start talking. Once I started reading off the names, almost all of my anxiety vanished. When you start talking, once you get into the flow of the presentation, your mind can't obsess over feeling anxious. It has to dedicate at least some of its energy towards what you are saying, so you're guaranteed to feel more relaxed. This is why many people start off their speech by tapping the microphone and saying, "Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?" It's because they're trying to get that first step over with, and it works. This is also why, while I am generally against memorization, I think it is helpful to memorize the first 10 to 20 seconds of your speech, because it really helps get you past those initial nerves. Okay, so that's our first category. Next is pace. Given what we discussed about anxiety, you can imagine what happens in terms of pace during a presentation. Most people, especially when they are nervous, talk too quickly. So I recommend going slower than feels comfortable to you. This has an added benefit of creating a calming effect. When you talk rapidly, it sends out biochemical messages to stay excited, or in this case, to stay anxious. But when you purposely slow down, you naturally become more calm and centered. Another technique that can help you maintain a proper pace is pausing. No one talks nonstop in real life, but I find that students have a fear of pausing in their speeches. When you fail to pause, it can give a rushed and breathless feel to your speech. In addition, it makes it much harder for the audience to retain all the information. And finally, if you're working from notes, pausing ensures that you won't lose your place, which can lead to skipping information, as well as increasing anxiety as you frantically scan your script. So I like to build in the word pause in my notes. I put it in all caps and center it on the page so that I can't miss it. And I find this helps make sure that I don't get lost in the momentum of my speech. The third category is content. Because there is usually an infinite amount of information you could include in your presentation, and because most presentations have a time limit, it is very important to determine which information to include and which to exclude. One very important statistic to remember is that people only retain 20% of what they hear. So even if you deliver the perfect speech, if it contains too many distinct points, the audience will forget almost everything you've said. This is where it is important to remember that, even though you will write your speech, you are not delivering an essay. People can't go back and reread. I experienced this one semester when a senior gave a persuasive speech on why we should ban GMOs, genetically modified organisms. She was an expert on the topic. She was also a very experienced public speaker. She was confident, articulate, composed, and all of her points were compelling and well-researched. However, she delivered the equivalent of a PhD dissertation in a 10-minute speech, so I was left thinking, wow, great speech. I can't remember a single thing she said. So how can you avoid this? As a general guideline, I find that it's helpful to give 3 main points in your speech. I don't know why 3 is the magic number, but that seems to be the tipping point. Obviously, this will change if you're giving a 20-minute presentation, but for the standard 5 to 10-minute speech, I find that 3 main points work best. I also strongly recommend that you keep multiple drafts of your speech. Start off by writing everything. Fully indulge your desire to include every detail. Then, even if it feels morally wrong, start deleting, and then save the new document as Speech 2, so that you will have the comfort of knowing all the information is in the initial draft. After that, keep revising and removing a little more information, each time saving the new draft with its corresponding number. Your goal should be to have at least 5 versions of this presentation, with each successive draft shorter than the last. I've gone through as many 12 drafts for the same speech, and with each new draft, I was positive that this was it. I had taken out as much information as I possibly could. Not a single word could be eliminated, and each time I discovered that I could take out entire paragraphs. I've also found an incredibly helpful tool to assist in this deletion process is to have other people read your speech. Because they don't have the same emotional attachment to the material, it is much easier for them to see what might be redundant or irrelevant. Okay, we have just reviewed anxiety, pace, and content. The fourth category is body language or nonverbal communication. This is a very important category because even if your content is perfect, how you present yourself has a huge impact on your speech. It reminds me of this Maya Angelou quote. She says, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And another quote that I think merges perfectly with Maya's sentiment is this: "Physiology affects psychology." We usually think of this in reverse. We think that our mood affects how we act. But the opposite is also true. If you were really nervous and I said that you had to give your speech while skipping in a circle and throwing confetti from a bucket, it would be very hard to stay nervous. Or if you were feeling great and I said you had to give your speech while sitting in a beanbag chair with your hands in your pockets and staring at the floor, it would be very hard to stay engaged and confident. Here are 2 techniques that can assist in not only projecting, but also inhabiting a comfortable, confident presence. First is something Amy Cuddy calls a power pose. She gave a great TED Talk on this. So while I don't recommend doing this during a speech, many people do them beforehand. There are various stances that engender confidence, even if they make you feel foolish at first. But in addition to these stances, there are basic ways of standing or sitting that convey confidence to the audience and instill confidence in the speaker. So pay attention to the way you're standing, what you're doing with your hands, and how you're talking, as changing any of these 3 behaviors can alter the way you feel and therefore the way you present. I find that all students are masters at nonverbal communication outside of the classroom. I see them talking to friends in the hallway or on campus, and they are supremely confident, engaged, and captivating. But then they change everything once they get in front of an audience. This has nothing to do with their content, but their demeanor, their presence. They almost become a different, less empowered person. One simple way to transfer this mastery from one environment to another is to pay attention to how you speak and move when you are with people who you really like and with whom you feel really comfortable. How do you talk when you are thoroughly engaged in a subject? Notice how you act and then reverse engineer that process. If you find that you speak with your hands when you're confident and happy, then make sure you replicate this when giving a speech. Don't stand there with your hands at your sides or glued to a podium. If you notice that you tend to move around when you talk, don't stand motionless in front of the class. Discover what works for you and then deliberately repeat that approach. This takes us to the last category, which is focus. I have noticed that when giving a presentation, despite spending hours and hours on the material and the points they want to convey, most students are focused on themselves. I find that this is not productive as it tends to generate anxiety about what other people think of you rather than your information. So I recommend shifting your focus. Rather than the always debilitating question, what do they think of me? Instead, ask yourself, what do I want my audience to come away with? How do I want this information to affect people? These are empowering questions because they allow you to focus on the excitement of presenting compelling content rather than the dread of presenting yourself up for judgment. So in review, just accept, observe, and say "so what" to your anxiety. Pause and speak more slowly than feels comfortable. With the help of friends, create multiple drafts of your speech. Let your physiology affect your psychology, and keep your attention on the material and what you want people to get out of your speech. That's all. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching.